I want to say thank you all so much for joining us today. Good morning. You are at the Triad ISSA Chapter's 2021 Security Summit, and this is going on from Tuesday to Thursday. We're going to send some links into the chat session that will show you how to get to the schedule, and also some information about Thursday night. Thursday night, we will be having an in-person social event. We would love to see your faces. If you're comfortable getting out, if you can get out, that will be on Thursday evening. But we do need you to RSVP, and this is at Segra's location in the High Point Palladium area, and very central to the entire Triad. And for people who register for that event and come to that event, we are giving away your choice of either a CISSP or a CISM prep guide. And so we'll ship that to your home for one lucky giveaway winner. And of course, we will have other links on here, for example, on how to join our email list so you can get an idea of what's going on in the ISSA Triad chapter, as well as a daily email we're sending during this security summit with links to join each session. And so really looking forward to hearing from Mike today. This is probably something I'm going to say a few times, but it's great to have an information security leader in the area. I'll say an information security celebrity giving a presentation here. We're just going to keep saying that. But anyway, it's great to have Mike today. Mike, feel free to take it away.
All right, thank you. Okay, give me a moment. This is trying to share. Okay. I got sharing up. All right, guys. So today is entitled, How Did This Happen? The Beginning of a Cyber Attack. Excuse me. So a little bit about me, kick it off. I am part of InfraGard. It is an organization run by the FBI and overseen by DHS. The fact that I'm still sitting here means that the yearly check that they do on us, I'm keeping my nose clean. There's another part of InfraGard called Patriot Circle. I encourage everyone who considers himself a strong patriot to check it out. It's a lot of good information there, a lot of good thing to be a part of. If you don't want to be a part of InfraGard, go through that whole 6 to 8 month background process. Patriot Circle is a good place to start. Another one is Pentest Magazine. I'm in several publications, but I do a lot of work with Pentest Magazine. I just did an interview for them in the last edition, or the 1 month before, I believe. No, a month before. So I encourage you to check out Pentest Magazine. I did an article back in June, White Hat Approach to Insider Threats, a 15-page article. It's not just a little blurb. So definitely check it out. So here's my paranoia advisory. It's like I like to tell everyone. It's not paranoia. The internet knows more than you think. And this is about as close to a presentation that you're going to get where this lines up almost perfectly. So that being said, what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about cyber exposure factors. We're going to talk about cyber attacks and explain them a little bit more. We're going to talk about digital profiling. And then we're going to talk about targeting based on that digital profiling. And then detecting personal cyber attacks. You know, how do we determine whether or not we are actually being attacked? And then what can you do? You know, what can you do if you're actually being attacked, or what can you do to lessen that from occurring? We're going to do some live demonstration. Anybody see my presentations know this? And then we're going to finish it out with questions. So when you always hear about cyber attacks, and I'm not by any means diminishing any of the organizations that do this sort of thing, but what do they always do? They always basically start with this whole, well, this is how they got into your environment, and then they did this, and then they went here and they took this data and they did all this, and you need to respond this way. Well, that's all great and good. It gets a little fuzzy, as you can see here. It's a little fuzzy. You know, it's like it doesn't really quite make sense to you, and then it really doesn't make sense when they try to break down everything that just occurred in the environment. So what I'm going to do today is I'm not going to do any of this. I'm not going to show you any of this. What I'm going to show you is what it takes to get to this point, right? And I'm not going to show you all the labors that go into it, but I think that from what you'll see, you'll get a pretty good idea of the saying how it goes with respect to being attacked in your environment, saying, well, they've been in your company for 180 days or 180 days or longer, 2 years or longer, whatever. I'm here to tell you they've been in your life a lot longer than that in most cases, but it really depends on the target. So moving on, cyber exposure factors. So what are some of those exposure factors? We're talking about the person, the individual, but also the company, social inputs. A lot of people think social media when they think social inputs. Social inputs also have to do with interacting. How do you interact with somebody? How do you individually interact with somebody? How do you individually interact with your customers, with your employees, with your counterparts within your organization or other organizations for that matter? Transaction data, another one that people think, as soon as they think hear transaction data, they think, banking um, or financial type things. It's actually how you transact with people. How do you transact online? What are you doing to basically, identify yourself with respect to an organization or a company or an individual for that matter? And then public record, of course, that's self-explanatory. Everything that's everything that's related to what we do here in the States is considered public record. What I like to tell the kids at cyber camp, FBI cyber camp, is that look, you're not 18 yet, so legally what would be considered public data in this country is not yet public. So how do you prevent that from being becoming more so used against you? Well, the same thing holds true for us adults, right? That public information, we always hear about identity theft, and we're bombarded with commercials on how to protect ourselves in this manner and that manner, but not realizing that that because it's available and because of the way that it's posted out there, it can also be used for other things. But that's not just the only public record. The other public record is how you're conducting yourself online, how you're basically, whether you're part of an organization that you're constantly active with, or you're part of a company that your job is to be the face of that company. But what if you're not? What if you're just some, regular office worker, if you will, and you really don't do a whole lot? Do you have the same level of exposure? Absolutely. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a bit. And then private health information, so we always talk about, keeping our health information safe and the value of that information. Well, what if that information was used against you in a way that makes you do something for somebody else? And think about it this way. Let's say that there is a recall on a medicine and you're not really sure if your medicine, or you take a lot of medications and things like this, but then all of a sudden you receive all this information about these medications that you are taking that could harm you, but all of that information is false. Well, how'd they get that? How'd they know that? So we'll get into that a little bit too. So all these are referred to as a cyber Bigfoot digital footprint. So what information is out there? Well, you name it, it's being grabbed. And within 60 seconds, there's a lot of what's being shown here that's actually being gathered. And we know this. We're told this all the time. Yes, they got our information. Yes, they're getting it. They're selling it. Yes, I got that. Well, yes, the marketeers are there. The media agencies are there. They are gathering all this information. But while we're sitting here, using all these different services and doing all this different activity online, that same information that's being used by the agencies is also being used by the attackers. And we'll go into that a little bit more too in the demo. So you are the cyber target at the end of the day. You are the one that's actually being targeted to determine whether or not there's an entry point into the organization. Everybody wants to talk about the edge, the firewalls, the different aspects of the perimeter defense. Well, I'm here to tell you the edge is not your firewall. The edge is your endpoint, is your laptop, is your phone, is your device that you're using individually to connect to your organization. But before you connect to your organization with that device, you're connecting to a whole host of other things personally to interact, as I mentioned prior, with all the different aspects of that digital footprint. So there's going to be a great effort to basically target an individual, and it could be a single individual, it could be multiple individuals. And the demonstration I'm going to do today, we're going to be targeting a single individual. So what are they doing? They're basically attempting to take all of your information and see what they can do with it. They're looking at your biometric data that's being stored on your devices. They're looking at your password activity that you're using with different types of services. And they're looking at all of the different types of services that you take part in addition to what they've actually found with respect to your initial exposure that they started with. So they dig a bit deeper to see, okay, I see that I got this information on this individual. What else can I get based on this little bit of info? Sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it's a whole host of things. So they're going to build out an attack grid. They're going to figure out a way to get to you, and then what company you're associated with, and how to get to that company. So with that, let's go straight into the demo. So the first thing I want to point out is where did you get this information? How do you go about finding out whether or not there's something of value to get? Well, a lot of times you always hear people say, well, yeah, this service was compromised, my password was probably stolen, but I don't know what they're going to do with it. Well, I'm about to show you what an organization, one particular group, actually does with their data. So here in Telegram, I did a search for NordVPN. Very common advertised solution, supposed to be secure. I'm not going to poo-poo on NordVPN, but it's clear from this listing here that they are in fact, posting people's information. So full disclosure, I have not logged into this person's stuff, but we're going to look here and I'm going to say, okay, here's a whole bunch of information. Some of these are expired, some of these are current. So we're going to pick one. Well, we got Gmail's in here, we got Yahoo's in here, but wait a minute. Here's one that looks like a company one. Okay, so we're going to look at this company one right here. So if I go and I take and I look up the D. Conrad, first off, I'm going to say, okay, let's validate this person's email address. Okay, so D. Conrad at Big Pond. .net.au. That's a valid domain. We're going to check the email. And it refused it. Interesting. Okay. Let's go dig a little deeper. Let's look up Big Pond and see what it's made up of. So I'm going to pull all this data, and this is from services that are online, available online for anyone. This is where we're going to start. Okay? And the reason I'm starting with this is because if there's nothing on the surface that's of value or much posted, I'm not going to dig any deeper because you'll see here in a moment what goes into digging that much deeper. So here we can see that there are a series of various bits of information. What I'm looking for is the email. How is the email being sent right now? And you can see here that there's a very thin layer of activity here with regards to email. So that tells me that it's there, but they're not exactly using it. And there's other aspects of this environment that that doesn't really appear to be of any value to me at all. It's almost like something has happened to this company, and there may be a reason why I'm seeing this. But I'm also noticing too is that there's this Telstra corporation that's associated with this Big Pond. So if I go and look up Telstra Corporation and Big Pond, I'm going to find the Telstra Media used to be called Big Pond. Wow. Okay. So interesting. So we got somebody using a company email address to log into a NordVPN account that could very well be associated with this Big Pond or this company. But we just said, all right, wait a minute. his email address doesn't work anymore. But what if we go and look at, hold on, I got this stupid share. There it goes. I hate this bar thing that they do with the, excuse me, Zoom. The Zoom bar was in my way. Yeah, I couldn't get to anything. All right, so we're looking up Telstra, and Telstra is a huge company. Telstra is basically looks like an AT&T type company. I mean, they are absolutely massive. The map for these guys alone, look at this. This is an eye chart. I'm not even gonna, but you see here how the MX record, there's just tons of email points. So this is an active email environment for these guys. So I'm looking at this going, all right, where is, do they use this telstra.com.au for their email address? There's a very good chance of that if I go and check and see if that is in fact the case, and the answer is yes. So all right, this is their email address or domain that they use for email address. Let's go back to this tool and let's change D. Conrad to see if he still works for this company now that they used to be Big Pond. You can see here it didn't work before. Oh, look at that. It is valid. So he does work there. I now have a valid target. So let's dig a little bit more into Mr. Conrad and find out where else and what else he's associated with. And given the fact that Mr. Conrad likes to use his company email address for other services, normally you would want to go in and find out, are there any other D. Conrads? Has he got a Gmail account? Does he have a Yahoo account or any other free type account? But one of the things I want to point out real quick is when companies ask me about how they got to a certain point with respect to a breach that they occurred and things like this, one of the first things I look for is I run, and this is another solution that somebody would actually run. So I run a check on basically the environment, and I'm running it on Telstra right now. It's not finished. It's hopefully it will finish by the time we get into this. But this is another check that I'm actually doing. This is a more advanced version of what would be run in Cali, called Spiderfoot. And basically what will end up coming back is all of the affiliated domain or email accounts for the organization that were part of a breach of some other company where they used a company email address for a personal service. I encourage everyone to discourage that behavior, if at all possible. This is a clear indication. Now, you could probably argue, okay, well, maybe he's using NordVPN for his company. Really? A large telco company like that is going to use NordVPN? I don't think so, right? He clearly used it for his personal one, and he's one of these individuals that doesn't like to have to go to a lot of places to check his email. So, maybe a long timer also. That tells me he might be a long timer at the organization. People who are usually established over a long period of time are comfortable with the organization, they're comfortable in the company, and they've established themselves. And they just kind of, they think they're never leaving. So they're just going to send everything there, right? So that's another indication of the fact that this person is not using, even if they have personal email addresses, they're not using them for that. So this makes this target even more valuable. So definitely discourage the use of company email addresses for personal services because of, well, this is a very good indication of why. All right, so now we know that the D. Conrad works. So we have the email address that's there. So the next question is, are they protected? All right, are they using any sort of email security? And typically you would see that in the breakdown of how their email is actually being communicated. So looking at this here, I'm looking for a service that's being used for spam filtering, just an email security gateway. I'm trying to find out if there is something here that would tell me that, okay, I need to get a little more clever with the email that I'm going to craft and send over, or is it wide the hell open and they really have no filtering other than maybe some default service that's running in their hosting environment that they have, like the spam assassin or something like this, right? So I'm looking here and I do not see any redirects to what you would normally see, like a Mimecast or a Proofpoint or something like this. These guys are getting their emails straight on, right? Well, that's music to my ears, because there's a very good chance that I could send some probe emails over there just to see if I would get a response. These probe emails are going to have no attachments, no links, and just going to be an inquiry to see if somebody would actually respond to it. You could also put a phone number in there to basically see if they would actually call it, to pose as some sort of other service that's being used. And a company of this size, they deal with so many different things. Depending on what Mr. D. Conrad is responsible for, we could actually get into that as well here in a moment.
Mike, are you also looking for SPF, DKIM, and DMARC settings?
So that would actually be, yes. So that would actually be in this output that they are using DKIM and DMARC. And as you could see probably a moment ago, crap, it's going to crash on me, isn't it? Yes, it is.
I saw the tilde all.
Yeah, they don't, it's just going all, they don't even have it. There is no DKIM and DMARC record here. Now you can check that, of course, right? But even if you have DMARC or DKIM, that's only half the battle, right? You still, if you create a new email address, the spam score is 0. If you're coming from a reputable service, then that's the DKIM and DMARC is gonna be basically taken care of. Yeah, there's nothing here that indicates that. So, so yeah, very interesting. The other thing I noticed too was when I was going through these domain names, is they switched over to a .com for their Big Pond instead of using the .net, .au. They switched it to a .com and they got this sign-in here page here. Well, now I'm going to beat the hell out of this thing to see if I can enumerate any of this data, right? Yeah, they got reCAPTCHA in here, but even if they've improperly maintained these fields, which they probably didn't, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, but there's a very good chance. And basically see if there's anything that could come of this page or anything associated with it. So I went from basically finding a breached account for this individual to now I'm looking at associations with the company and with that individual. But we need to get back to how do we get to D. Conrad? How do we manipulate this person, right? And so let's see here. All right, we're going to shut this one down. Let me jump over here. Had to build this machine this morning. All right, so this is one of several tools, and this Multigo folks that are familiar with this is just one of several that could be used. And the problem with Multigo is, as you can see, just looking at the company alone for Telstra, and you're probably thinking, okay, why did you just type in Telstra? Why didn't you type in the whole, the actual domain or actual name of the organization? Well, I don't know that entirely. The other thing too is that being a large media company like this, they're going to have branches of themselves. So there's a very good chance that D. Conrad is not part of the larger corporation. He could be part of a smaller entity of that corporation. So I think we are. All right. So the first thing I did was I ran D. Conrad's original .net.au email. And what I'm looking for is, relationships. What types of interconnectivity does it have? It has a LinkedIn account, right? So some person over here is D. Conrad Dina. So I guess that's, well, Dina Conrad. So there we go. Now we have a first name, right? There's some documents associated with Dina. We could look and see what those associated are associated with. I find it interesting. Trick Spam Bot that is also associated with this email address. That's curious. To dig into that to see if there's any activity posted on the net, on the dark net associated with that on IRC. Just kind of thumbing through here. Here we go. Dina Conrad, right? So Dina Conrad is our person's full name. And what else is Dina Conrad doing? So it's a Skype account. Let's see, definitely with Big Pond. So there you go. So there's that. That's validated. Interesting, some pastebin activity associated with D Conrad. So that could be an indication that they've been compromised. Well, we already know that. So there's a very good chance that these pastebins are nothing more than her NordVPN account, right? So let's see, what else do we have here? We're looking for some phone numbers. Let's see if there's any phone numbers associated with D Conrad. So not seeing anything offhand here, but there's definitely enough. Okay, got an Adobe account. That could be also another compromised account to search for. And what would I be searching for? I'd be searching for a similarity in password there. The other thing I always tell people is that when you have used your company account to perform or sign up for a service that's personal, the password that was used, is it the same as your work password? The answer I usually get is, well, not exactly, or no. And then they hesitate and they go, well, it's more complicated. I added more to it. So what that tells me is that, okay, you're more complicated. You use the same password, you used a variant of your same password that you use for work, and you may have added a character to it or two, special character, maybe a number, something like this. So what that tells me is I got 3/4 of your password for your Office login potentially. So I would go back to those services that we just saw with Telstra, and I would say, okay, does Telstra have a VPN domain? They do. They have multiple. So, okay, so we would want to be able to test this, but we need to figure out, what kind of client are they using? And that's not difficult to do, especially if they got a VPN pointing to that environment. Typically, you can bring that up and it'll actually give you the connection, so you can download the client for that particular VPN connection. So going back to the company itself, here you can see there's lots of Telstras. There's Global Limited, Incorporated, Limited. This right here is actually a huge gaming company out of Germany. It's interesting that they're associated with Telstra. They've been around for years. Could it be one and the same? Sure. But there's just a lot of information here that can be dug into, and you can see there are many, many countries. They could be one and the same. They could be individual. It just depends. But an organization of this size, depending on how much they are spread out, it just goes to tell you that they may not be as cyberly sound as you would expect them to be, right? Everybody always thinks that's a large company. They got their crap together. No, how many times have we seen that, right? Even recently here. So now that we know that Dina Conrad has a Telstra.com account, we can also dig in to see if there's anything associated with this. And so far, what I'm seeing, interestingly enough, is not much. And that would tell me that, now here's I have up in pawn shows. So this account has been compromised. But there isn't a whole lot out here because Dina hasn't used this account to sign up for anything like she has with other ones. So, so instead of focusing on this account that we know is valid, that would be the one to communicate with Dina with, This is going to be, the old account is going to be where we're going to look for more information to determine whether or not we can get to Dina. So house.com, I can tell you this one right here. This is a personal service, and it was compromised. So this account was compromised on house.com. So that's another indication. So you get the idea. So this is kind of so you get the idea. So now that I have all this information, I'm going to spend a good bit of time putting together a profile of what, based on what Dina Conrad is doing. So the hacking has been detected on both sides. There may be an indication sent to Dina that D. Conrad that, hey, your account was part of this service and it's been compromised. They take any action on it? Maybe they change the email address, maybe they, or password, maybe they don't. We don't know that. But there are risk alerts associated on both sides of the equation. The attacker has a lot of indications of the accounts being compromised that's being targeted of that individual. And there's a very good possibility that the individual themselves was notified at some point that was in fact, an account that was compromised. And so that would tell them, okay, maybe the house one isn't one to go after because there's a very good chance that password has already been reset. But they could also go back and take the NordVPN account password and try it on the other services associated with this person's name and see if they actually work. So we'll get into that. So putting that profile together is the next step, putting all of those pieces that are being found. And there's a lot more that goes into this. This is a very, very, very brief version of all the activities. So another question I get is, how long does this usually take? It takes months. It takes absolutely months to do, especially when you find the interconnect or the link there, like we did just in the short time. We found a compromised service account associated with a company email address. We were able to validate that the company email address has changed, but it has changed over to one that is still viable, still there. There's a very good chance that that person is still with the organization. So now we're able to make a connection that usually takes a bit more time to do in a very short amount of time. Sometimes it's that simple. And then we're able to identify that there's various other activities that this individual is involved with, but it could pour into social media, look at the Twitter and that sort of thing. Is there an easy way to do this? Easier way to do this? Absolutely. So we're going to start targeting that personal data. We're going to start looking for more personal data. So in order to do that, we're going to use a service called SITH. So with SITH, what I would do, or you the individual can do this too. It's a service that anybody can use, but the bad guys use it a lot. It used to be free. Now you have to pay for it. So if you just have, a dummy email account and a Visa gift card, you can go ahead and sign up for one if you're a bad guy. But you get in here and you actually plug in your information, and it's going to show you activity with Facebook. It's going to show you activity with Twitter, LinkedIn, and it's got a whole host of other social media options in there. But I just grabbed this screenshot to show if there's actually usage being done. And so the bad guy can literally sit here and log in as you with your information, your stolen credentials, and watch your activity and see who you're conversating with, what types of things are you showing interest in. And this can all just kind of run in the background and then dump out a report and make a determination of, all right, I see that they're really big into a concert scene, or they're really big into sports, or they're really big into hobbyists, or whatever. And just try to make a determination, what is the best way to get to that individual? How do you interact with them to get the conversation started, the virtual conversation started? So part of that SITH service provides you situational awareness, cyber situational awareness. And while you sit there and kind of reflect on what you do normally online and how you conduct yourself and the various types of things you talk about, as private as you think that is, everybody should know that there's nothing that's private anymore. The only thing that's private is what they do with your data, not your data itself. So having situational awareness of how you're conducting yourself and having services like SITH, where you can go in and basically kind of do a profile of your own activity just to see what it knows, would be a great indication of what you need to do to change your habits. You get people that say, well, I'm on Facebook, but I don't post a whole lot. But then you turn around and you see that, hey, we're going on vacation. We'll be gone from such and such and such and such. And, you know, back when all this was a thing, you know, there was a website that was called pleaserobmyhouse.com. And it would show where you were based on the Twitter tracking that was publicly available at the time. Now they just want to track you and let you do it yourself. And then where your house was, and it would show how far away you were and then your house. Well, that's still a thing. It's just not as surfacely accessible as it used to be. But the bad guy has the ability to do that sort of correlation, do that geo tracking on your activity to see, okay, here's where you've been, here's where you go, here's where you are, and see if there's a pattern there, and also manipulate that pattern based on that. So being aware of what you're doing, you know, every day. I'm not suggesting that you completely change your habits or completely change what you're doing. Just kind of think through what you're doing and how what I just showed you could very easily come back to bite you and your organization. So my final cyber thought is this. I'm going to repeat it again. We always discourage people to try not to use, you know, Dropbox, personal box, things like this for conducting business or activity, using personal accounts with respect to SMS or even instant messaging services to conduct deals with. But people are looking for that most convenient method of communication. And if they have a relationship with somebody on a personal level, and they also have that same relationship with that individual on a business level, there's a very good chance that they're going to be using, you know, out of band solutions to communicate with those individuals. Is there anything that you can do about that? No, but as an individual, you can do something about that. You can basically say, okay, yeah, we probably don't want to talk about this over, you know, you always hear in all the movies, we're talking over an open line. Well, think about, you know, when you're talking to somebody on an instant message service, you're talking to them on, you know, over an open line, of course, unless you're using Signal. But the point is that you need to see, based on what we were seeing today with this individual that was using a company-based account to sign up for personal services. The account is clearly compromised. It's still good until next year. So it probably works if they haven't already changed their password. Has Nord notified anyone? No. Nord has not yet let everyone know that they have a problem. And the reason for that is because the way their application is designed, there is a tool out there called Get Nord and Verify Nord to pull those accounts straight out of their own environment. So you're using it on your mobile phone. You're thinking, okay, is my mobile phone compromised? Well, no, the app is compromised, but it's compromised at the hosting level, not at the usage level, which is on your tablet or your phone or even your laptop. So the recommendation is, you know, looking at how you're conducting yourself personally, how those activities can affect your organization, either inadvertently or directly, is what the key of this presentation is. To make sure that you're keeping in mind how you're conducting yourselves and how that can actually hurt your organization. So cybersecurity is a shared responsibility, as I say. You always want to stop and think before you connect. And I wanted to leave enough time today for questions and also for the ability to bring up or even display other things. So we have a good amount of time left, and there's a lot of data that just went into this. And so I want everyone to take time to ask some questions, and I can even pull something up and do a query for you based on some of the utilities that you've seen today.
Mike, I was commenting offhand about how I think that with the sessions today, we're getting a lot of different emotions. One earlier today made me laugh and grimace a little bit. The last one was very inspirational, and this one's just making my jaw hit the floor. But one question I have, thinking about the amount of data that's out there, from the standpoint of a defender, and seeing this extremely exposing data potentially on my company. Can you, I can think of like one or two on my own, but can you share maybe some of the practical ways we can take this information and use it to, better defend our companies?
Yeah, it all goes back to, so one of the things I always point out is that you can have, here's a Spotify account, you can have some of the best tech out there, right? In terms of security layers within your organization. But if your operational security is flawed, right? Your processes, your procedures that go into making certain that certain various activities are done, even practices of password management or even least privilege for that matter, right? I mean, one of the things that let's just say, okay, let's just say for instance that password is compromised, right? And let's just for instance say that the D Conrad's password on NordVPN is the same password that they would use for for VPN into their own company, right? For that client. Let's just for argument's sake say that's the case. So what technology solution would protect you from having that be compromised? Well, you have multi-factor authentication. You always hear everybody talk about. Well, let's say the company doesn't have that either. Least privilege. If the attacker doesn't have the ability or the user doesn't have the ability to execute or install anything on their computer, neither does the bad guy, right? Everybody's buying all of these solutions to detect and monitor and alert and all this other business. The most simplest of things is that just don't let it allow. Just don't allow it. If you don't allow it, it can't happen, right? And so I asked a very prominent company in this space one time. They're large, very large endpoint protection company, and their senior VP of region for the region was there. And I said, if your customers all got rid of local administration rights on their company computers, what would that do to you? He says, I hope they don't, because I'd be out of a job. Least privilege. Now, a lot of people go, well, we can't really get rid of that because of certain apps and things. I get it, right? And then there are other things that you can put on there to protect that. So my point is this: if you have somebody that you've clearly identified is using a company account for personal services, then the next thing is to basically go in and see, okay, that still hasn't come up yet. Have they, let's see if I can bring up previous one here. So right here, where it says hacked email address. So these are all company accounts that were used. And then this one has leaked site content. So there's a lot of different exposures that these folks have. But these are 3 email accounts that were part of other services that were compromised. And so if you have some assessment that's done in your organization, they come back and show you this, the next thing you would need to do is make a determination of what is that person, what do they actually access? What is their responsibility? How are you guys set up in the environment? If they're one of those users that have to have local administration rights for the purposes of whatever, do you have a proper endpoint protection on there, like a EDR, like a detection and response program that can stop the execution, right? AV is not going to do it. It's going to be a more advanced persistent threat than that. So you need something to basically stop the execution. The answer to stopping ransomware is to stop the initial execution from occurring on the endpoint. Even if you have flawed operational security with respect to password management and the usage of email company resources to personal resources.
Thank you. That's excellent advice.
Hey, so one of the problems today is people like subtweeting about companies, or maybe they, give away details on a alternate Twitter account. Like with your use of, various tools, have you found any useful ways of gathering open source intelligence and correlating accounts maybe that are meant to be anonymous?
Yeah. So in Maltego, if you have the paid version, I don't know if the free version will do it, because on this machine I have the paid version and it wouldn't come up. But so if we go back to this Twitter account right here, I can drill from here. And since I just built this like, because the other one was there, I have to agree to. So, okay, so I don't have, okay, so these aren't my API keys. So I have these services. So, and that's the other thing, is you have to have all the various services to be able to take part in this. Let's see, how much time do we have? Okay, let me do this. Let me grab my API key for full contact, because that's going to be important for you to be able to answer your question better. So hold on a moment.
So it's the full contact API key that's needed in order to do that kind of function?
You have to, yeah, you have to have in order to use Spiderfoot or any of these, you have to own these API keys. They're not going to give them to you. Let's see here. Okay, so there's a phone number. So if there was, the other thing you can do is you can go in here and look for Alias. Yeah, so you could actually go and run this person's name and run it through Alias and basically see if there's any other names that they go by. So we didn't get much from this, probably because it crashed out on me. I don't have it fully configured, I apologize. But once fully configured, it would basically drill down a bit more on this individual. Go even further. Yeah, this thing is not fully configured. Oh, lovely. So Miss Conrad lives in Florida. You just caught that part. So probably got, oh, there's a picture. So, and now you're gonna pull family names, and you may pull some other names as well. So here's where you got the association. Russian, really? That's interesting. Oh, that is Russian. Is it Ukrainian? So yeah, you can dig deep down in here, and if you don't own an 85-inch TV, this probably be a good time to get one if you want to use this tool. Just kidding. Yeah, so basically you could run Alias and then you could run individual search. So that's what this just did. Was looking at individual search, and then it pulls all the property data and that sort of thing. So this is the free version of this tool that pulls this. If you actually own it, it goes even deeper, you can imagine. You also see here that it was unable to verify this email address as we did earlier. It takes a little bit longer to do, but it did that. So yeah, this is a free version of Maltego. You just have to own all of the APIs in order to really take advantage of this. I'm also curious to see where this phone number has been used. But while there is a tool, air finger quotes, tool to provide all this data, you still gotta go through it all, right? You still have to make a determination what is actually valuable and what can be used, what can't be used. And so okay, so the number is associated with Facebook, it's associated with Telegram. So they have a Telegram account, Facebook account, and what the hell is this? Dribble. Okay, Dribble. I don't know what Dribble is. Okay. So and then if that thing where people sign in using their Facebook account, so sign in using your Facebook or Gmail, I can now take this and blast it out and see all the services that they log in with using Facebook. And then cross-reference that with any services that have been compromised. Got a few more minutes. Anything else? No.
Any other questions while we have Mike? I'm glad you're my friend.
So it looks
I'm
like
not on your bad side.
Lynn.
What's that?
Now you have a full name right here. The Florida land property. So here's the thing that people don't know, and I actually got this from my buddy Frank Abagnale. We had him down many times to speak at FBI events. And Frank always said the best way to get a social security number is on deeds. So if you've ever bought property, your social security number is accessible. The only number that's actually not accessible is your driver's license number. That is not anywhere. It's not in public record. It's not on the deeds. It's nowhere. So anytime somebody asks, if service asks you for your driver's license number, that is the one number that is not really published anywhere other than DMV. There's other services that use it, but it's not published. So we could literally drill down here and see what else we can find, but I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, so Dina Lynn Conrad. Now I have a middle name. There's a lot more that you can do in the way of identity and dig even deeper, because as you come up on services, especially all these other public ones that are out there, you may come across 50 Dina Conrads, but now you have a middle name, so now you can narrow it down. And you also have Florida, so you know where Dina lives.
Mike, have you played with any of the data you can get out of the FEC?
I have not.
There's definitely some interesting stuff there. I know law enforcement.
I know. I've pulled it before, but I tried not to use it. All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you, everyone. Give back a couple minutes.
Thank you so much, Mike. We really do appreciate it. And just to kind of close up, we do have another session coming up here with Jim Keegan. Jim Keegan's on the line with us now. He's going to be talking about how to build a blue team. And if you don't know, we're posting these videos to our YouTube channel as we get them. So the other other sessions are already up, and I'm going to post Mike's here in just a minute. And again, we really appreciate you for sharing your very scary wisdom and showing us, deeper inside what can be done and what can be seen and how things happen. So again, we just want to remind you, we have Segra that is hosting an in-person event in High Point, and please sign up for that, and we'll see you at the next session.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.